Yes, you can. A podcast for high achievers. Hi, I'm Tammy North. I'm the owner of the Genuine Driven Women brand of businesses. The goal of this podcast is to help you become the best that you can be. Don't ever doubt the power you have to make the world a better place. Yes, you can make a difference. On today's episode, we're going to discuss when senior leaders lose self-awareness. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll remember that I did change organizations a few months back. There were two reasons for this. The most important was that I found a new position that allowed me to make an impact in a field that I care a lot about. Of course, it did come with an increased salary, and it provided me with a more strategic perspective of my area of expertise. And honestly, it's a position that celebrates the culmination of all the experience I've gained over the last 30 years of my life. Once I knew about this position, how could I not apply? Well, let me tell you how I found out about this particular position. I did a precise job search on a website where people in my industry typically look for jobs. That's it. When you are actually the perfect person for a position, someone will usually nudge you or tell you to apply or highly suggest you apply or forward you the job link or, something like this. And all of these actions suggest that you should submit your resume. But in this exact case, nobody tipped me off that there was a position. I had no idea that this particular position was even open. And one day earlier, I was not even job hunting. I was 90% happy with everything about my previous position. If you listen to the episode titled Doubters Destroy Dreams, but You Must Push Forward Anyway, you will hear how I got to where I am today. I could have stayed in that previous role forever, but I actually only planned to stay there for about 2 to 3 more years before seeking increased responsibility. My 2 to 5 year goal planner stated that I would begin exploring the next higher position starting in about 2020 so that I would actually be promoted by 2021. That's actually what I had written down in my planner. I loved that position and especially my team. And I knew every day when I walked into work that we were making a difference. So if I was not job hunting, then why did I decide to do a job search for a new position? It is straightforward, the senior leadership. I'm sure you've heard the quote, people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. And in this case, I can tell you that everyone in my entire chain of command was very kind. You could go to a happy hour, talk to them, and they were very genuine. They were highly successful. They each had between 30 and 45 years of impressive titles, experience, and knowledge. I had a flexible work schedule, and I believe that I had a good reputation in leading successful teams. They even sent me to do amazing things like shadowing the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for a month in Washington, D.C. Yes, I could have stayed at that organization and I probably would have survived. Wait, did you hear that word? Survived? Because that's precisely how it felt some days. Like we were marching into battle, preparing for war, creating alliances, and fighting off our enemies. No, I'm not talking about future wars that our nation may fight, nor am I talking about the fact that our job was to provide systems to compete and win those wars. I'm talking about the constant struggle inside our own organization. All the people at my level, leading teams of professionals, were on a mission doing the best that we could to deliver the capability the Navy needs. And at the absolute highest levels, from the Pentagon down to our executive leadership, there was a very, very clear vision. It was only a handful of people who were senior enough between us and the executive level who did not realize that they needed to make some improvements. I should add that I know they were told about all the areas they could have improved. I know people who told them directly. I know they heard them from command climate surveys, and I know that we brought many of them up at company-wide meetings. I know they even heard them in some cases from the executive leadership. At least 2 of them had executive coaches and received feedback, including 360-degree feedback. These 3 are but one example of just good people who became very successful and then chose not to adapt when feedback came their way. Why wouldn't they have made changes sooner? Well, that's what this episode is about. Why senior leaders lose self-awareness and how you can avoid falling into this trap. At the end of this episode, we'll discuss the steps you can take to achieve greatness and become a leader with grace. Honestly, the things they could have changed would have been straightforward, no cost, and probably would have led to massive success for the entire organization. Many leaders could use improvement in all the areas we will discuss today, including me in some cases. but not all leaders are aware that they are part of the many. So let's dig into the things that they could have changed so that we can all learn from this situation. The first thing is aligning to the executive vision, not only with words, but with actions. If clear direction has been given, consider this a blessing. Your leadership has made it very clear what they want, and all you have to do is march in that direction. In this case, it did not seem like anyone disagreed with the executive vision outright, so there was no reason not to follow it. In fact, a mission statement was created for people at my level to follow, with key tenets that strongly echoed the executive vision. This is where some changes could have been made. If you have a vision and a mission statement, and if it was well constructed, and if leadership truly believes that this is the way forward, then everything the business is doing should be in line with that mission. Likewise, everything that is not in line with that vision should be eliminated. This takes strong leadership, bold leadership, and often it means adjusting how some things have always been. A great leader will then take this bold vision and mission and guide their team forward with the vision by challenging the people at my level to develop detailed plans that align to this vision. A great leader will hold their team accountable to produce this plan. A great leader will be bold enough to let the team know when they have not gone far enough, and a great leader will expect more. A great leader will then support the teams as they go forward and execute their plans, knocking down barriers and clearing the path for them to move forward. A great leader will acknowledge and reward those moving in alignment with the vision and take the time to mentor the teams who have gone off course. It is not enough to have beautiful vision and mission statements printed on shiny, high-quality paper and posters. You must actually lead your team, challenge your team, and motivate your team to execute those same pretty words. The second area for improvement is you should praise in public and criticize in private. This is a key tenet of leadership that is highly ingrained in military leadership training. And since I'm such a voracious reader of leadership books and concepts in general, I do know that universally, most leadership training does include this concept. The main issue is that when military leaders decide to berate their teams in public, there is often very little that can be done about it at that moment. In that case, in the military, the troops can take their complaint up the chain of command, or if it's bad enough and it's actually killing command climate, they can report it to an inspector general. And the IG may eventually do an investigation if the claims are warranted. Either way, it's not a very fast process, and it may bear little to no results. But when a civilian leader decides to berate or humiliate civilian employees in front of the entire team at a meeting or other similar venue, there is a lot that civilian employees can do. If you are highly skilled and have an excellent reputation, not to mention at a time when unemployment is at an all-time low, why would you stay in an organization where this is a common occurrence? Even if you are not the one who is the target of the callous leader, your time will come. These leaders who motivate by fear and aggression, who lead with the idea that it is their way or the highway, will eventually find fault with you. This is a horrible atmosphere in which to work. The result will be an exodus of the best employees, and the leader will only be left with those who are afraid that this is their only option, or those who essentially have Stockholm Syndrome and have come to accept that this is the atmosphere, that this is how it is, and these people are their family or their clan. I know this might sound far-fetched, but let's talk about the 4 tenets of Stockholm Syndrome, and you tell me what you think. In Stockholm Syndrome, a hostage will develop positive feelings toward their captor. In general, there is no previous relationship between the hostage and the captor. In Stockholm Syndrome, hostages may refuse to cooperate with police and other government authorities. Or in a corporate world, you might look at it like, quote unquote, the hostages will not cooperate with inspector generals or other inspecting authorities who are concerned about the command climate. And then the 4th tenet is that a hostage's belief in the humanity of the captor will grow, and they will cease to perceive the captor as a threat. So even though the captor is still threatening and is actually holding back the hostage from either being released or being free, because the hostage starts to see them as too human, they will actually forget that the captor is a threat even to them. And yes, corporate Stockholm Syndrome is a concept that is being discussed more and more, and I think that it warrants a much deeper discussion than I have time for today. But I promise that I will do an entire episode on this concept in the coming weeks. Remember, nobody should have to work in a place where you are berated or where somebody is screaming at you or where it's a very negative, oppressive situation. There are so many other opportunities out there. Do not be afraid to look for them. The third area these leaders could have improved is by supporting their direct supervisors' decisions and executing based on those decisions. One of the most corrosive things in an organization is when a senior leader in an organization clearly decides on a way forward, and then somebody subordinate to that person goes behind their back and provides different direction. Honestly, this one comes back to executing vision. If there's a clear way forward and the entire leadership team is aligned on how the vision will be executed, then conflicting decisions coming from multiple people in senior leadership roles should not occur. Conflicting decisions hurt an organization in multiple ways. They create confusion about who is really in charge. They slow down progress because of lack of clarity. And then a dad said, mom said culture evolves, where employees go to their favorite senior leader to get their way, and the true head of the organization loses respect and is seen as weak. The culture of the company erodes due to lack of direction and cohesiveness, and the organization will eventually devolve into rival clans. The fourth area for improvement is the elimination of the perception of favoritism. When a leader consistently favors a few employees over others, they are showing favoritism. Though favoritism may not be directly illegal, it can have a damaging effect on the organization because it's often seen as unfair. When employees notice that there's favoritism at work, company morale will drop because favoritism leads employees to believe that no matter what they do, their efforts will not be rewarded unless they are in the circle of trust. Favoritism can cause employees to begin to resent the supervisor who is unfairly favoring employees, and it will also cause coworkers to resent favored employees who may be taking advantage of the situation. If the bitterness reaches a certain point, the company may be at risk of losing superb personnel who are looking for a place where all expertise is valued. The further morale declines, resentment will grow, and the more potential is overlooked. It is a toxic circle. A supervisor who unfairly favors one group of employees is also hurting the organization by stunting the growth that would come from moving the best employees forward to management positions and losing employees who may have been of great value in the future. The fifth area for improvement is using more than 3 brains out of 100. To talk about this issue, I have to mention one of my favorite leaders, and you can check out his blog, which I'll link in the show notes. He gave me a book called Multipliers: How the Best Leaders Make Everyone Smarter. I loved this book, and I highly recommend it for you too. In fact, I'll give you another podcast promise. In the near future, we'll discuss the entire Multipliers book for you. It's just an excellent book, and the concepts in there I love. The book describes multipliers and diminishers that may exist in an organization. Leaders rooted in the logic of multiplication believe that 1, most people in an organization are underutilized, and 2, all capability can be leveraged with the right type of leadership, and 3, intelligence and capability can be multiplied without requiring a bigger investment. So what this is saying is that across your entire organization, it is highly likely that most of the people are not being used to their maximum ability, that most of the people are much more capable than the leader is giving them credit for. But if that leader were to learn and grow and figure out how to harness all of this capability, that they would have one of the most powerful organizations there is. And these days, with tight schedules and lower budgets, there's a lot of need to try to get more out of less money. And one of the best ways you can do that is actually harness the amazing capability of all the people that work for you. And by doing that, it will be like you found another 30 out of 100 people, or maybe even 50 out of 100, depending on how much you're underutilizing them. I do recommend this book, and it gives you a lot of tips and tactics to notice if you are being a multiplier or a diminisher. And what I do think, especially in this situation and the leaders I'm talking about on this podcast, I actually think that to a high degree, they weren't aware. A couple of them are not aware they're doing this. I think maybe one of them was very aware that they are doing this and probably underestimated how much it hurt the organization. But the other 2, I think that they just weren't aware they were doing this. And so this is one area I think we can all work on, is making sure if you have a team of 5 people or 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, are you using all of the people to their best ability? And are you inspiring them, helping them grow to be everything they're capable of being? Because if you are a great leader, that's what you'll be doing. The sixth area for improvement is learning to trust others. And in other words, not allowing people who work 4 levels down the chain come and gossip in your office like one of various little birds on the Game of Thrones. Can you imagine working at a place where very senior leaders direct you to have certain subject matter experts on your team, not because of their expertise, because that would make sense. If for instance, they said you need this biochemical engineer on your team because whatever reason, then you could go, oh, that makes sense. I really need their expertise. But if you found, no, they wanted you to have this very specific engineer on your team because they were great friends with them for the past 30 years, and they knew that that engineer would run and tell them every small detail of your interactions with them. Sometimes these engineers would even send play-by-play text messages to the leader 3 levels more senior than this subject matter expert. And yes, this was happening in my previous workplace. And the problem wasn't really the people themselves, the people that were doing the tattletaling. I'd known many of them for years, and actually I liked them. They were good people. The problem was that they would go whisper or text something 3 levels higher, and you wouldn't necessarily know they were doing it. Eventually you realize over the years, okay, this happens. These 4 people or these 5 people are automatically going to go straight to that leader and tell them everything that happened in today's meeting. And so that's fine. Some sentence I said or some decision I made would be immediately brought into question by one of the leaders that this episode is about. And truthfully, I tried not to take it personally because that is simply how this particular leader did things. It's how he did business, and everybody knew it. Because I knew it, I would actually just call them out on it. I would tell the subject matter experts that were the known spies, if you want to say that. I would just call them out on it and say, I know you're going to go tell him everything I said. So, I would just make sure that they knew I was not blind to their reality. But also, I did use them strategically occasionally to get certain messages very quickly at that other level. And I try to craft it to some degree from time to time. Okay, so what's the problem with this approach? You can see I knew that it was happening. Everybody knew that this is not a secret. I didn't take it personally because it wasn't only happening to me or because of me. It was a common thing that happened for 20 years at that place probably. That everybody knew if these particular people were in your meeting that they were going to go tell this one person. And so since we all knew about it and they all did it and everybody basically expected it, then why is this a problem? Well, the main issue is that it signals he does not trust the leaders that he hired, and he only trusts himself. And I guess he trusts his little birds, but when you feel like somebody only trusts themselves, the way that they feel like they have to keep their fingers that deep into the weeds by using these little birds to tell all the details, that it really erodes trust. And here's what Stephen Covey has to say on the topic of trust. Trust always affects 2 outcomes, speed and cost. And I can tell you at my last command, we had 3 things we cared about. And one of them was speed and one of them was cost. So when trust goes down, speed goes down, and cost goes up. Consider the time and cost of airport security after 9/11. When trust goes up, speed goes up, and cost goes down. Covey also said, a company can have an excellent strategy and a strong ability to execute, but the net result can be torpedoed by a low trust tax or multiplied by a high trust dividend. So when you look at it that way, trusting or not trusting goes right along with the multiplier diminisher conversation. The 7th area to improve is finding time for the most important thing every single day. I'm going to have to use the Stephen Covey reference here too. If you listen to the First Things First podcast that we released in the fall of 2018, you will know that I'm a huge believer in the concept that there is one important thing you should do today, and until that one thing is done, nothing else matters. As Covey said, it's easy to know you're doing the right thing when it's a choice between good and bad, but what about when it's a choice between good and best? Remember this, often good is the enemy of best. So all the concepts in Covey's book will help busy executives manage their day and their week and their year. But these same executives must decide that they are going to be very deliberate in their activities. Most senior leaders do ensure that their time is being spent on good efforts. But what would happen if a senior leader prioritized his time such that it was only spent on great efforts? Those efforts that made the biggest impact each day or week. Progress toward the vision would soar with this type of leader making such clear, prioritized decisions. The 8th area for improvement is faster decision making without getting stuck in analysis paralysis. Lack of decision making is a sign that a leader is risk adverse. This fear dramatically slows down progress. I found a funny quote by Ross Perot. He says, I come from an environment where if you see a snake, you kill it. At GM, if you see a snake, the first thing you do is go hire a consultant about snakes. Then you get a committee on snakes, and then you discuss it for a couple years. And the most likely course of action is nothing. You figure the snake hasn't bitten anybody yet, so you just let him crawl around on the factory floor. We need to build an environment where the first guy who sees the snake kills it. Okay, say what you will about Ross Perot, but everybody agrees he knew how to do business. So, especially in today's market, things are very complex. There's always going to be some amount of analysis required. And depending on the issue, there may be quite a lot of analysis required. The main thing is to make sure that as a senior leader, you are not allowing your fear of making a decision drive you to analyze things to death. At some point, you have to decide. You can help your teams bring you recommendations for good decisions by clearly stating the goal or outcome that you are looking for. They will be able to do the research and any data analysis required and then provide you with several recommendations based on that research. If you are not satisfied with any of the recommendations, ask yourself, does your ideal solution even exist? If you are sure that it does, can you provide your team with clear direction so that they research exactly what you're looking for? Are you sure that you have not locked in on a goal in spite of what the research is leading toward? If you are locked onto a solution and do not want to hear about any other solutions, then wouldn't it be better for you to state that up front and let your team create a plan to make that exact thing happen? You will all be more satisfied because your team will not spend years working towards something that you will never support. And the ninth area for improvement is having shorter meetings and scheduling the right meetings. If one of the major problems was alignment to the executive vision or the actual tactical execution of the executive vision, and people seem to be too busy to collaborate on their own, one thing the senior leadership could have done was spending less time in very traditional staff meetings where we were all directed to say the things that our team did last week and the things that our team planned to do this week. We spent between 90 minutes and 3 hours in these types of weekly meetings, depending on our role. And then we spent another 60 minutes about every 10 days with the same group of leaders talking about our single program. That is 3 to 4 hours per week alone that could have been spent on more productive time moving toward the vision with multiple team leads. It is my estimation that these senior leaders only took the time to get all the team leads together about once every 3 months or less, and then even then only spent a small portion of that time that they scheduled each quarter to verify that we were working together. Aligning our collective strategies and moving toward what our primary customer needed. I found an interesting calculator on the Harvard Business Review website that calculates the actual cost of meeting time. It is very fast to use. You can try it out for yourself, and I will link it in the show notes. So if you are a senior leader, your teams are going to do exactly what you want them to do. What opportunity do you have with the time you spend directly meeting with them to move them closer to your stated vision? That's what you have to ask yourself. How much this meeting time is costing, not only in actual dollars, but in reduced time toward vision or increased time toward vision. The 10th area these leaders could have improved upon is balancing time spent traveling to sync with stakeholders with time spent in the office to allow for understanding and decision making. If item number 9 was handled more deliberately, meeting times, etc., there would be more good quality time free for critical stakeholder engagement. Be warned though, all stakeholders are not equal. There are some that are absolutely critical. There are some that are necessary, and there are some that can cause some impact, positive or negatively, and there are some that create almost no impact at all, although you may feel obligated to keep them informed for any number of reasons. When you are taking critical time away from the office, it will be paramount to conduct a stakeholder analysis and verify that the stakeholders you spend time with is done for a purpose and with your vision in mind. So these 10 areas that sadly have not been going well, and number 2 in particular, praising in public and criticizing in private, is the reason that caused me just to do that one simple job search to see what else was out there. I was out of the office on travel in Washington, D.C., and one of these senior leaders decided to deride my deputy in front of the entire department for something that technically made zero difference, and he did provide a very out of balance demonstration of frustration. You can see that with all the things we talked about today, that one thing was really more like, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was unfortunate, but it was sort of like the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I heard about this situation on the phone and I hung up and I did one very specific job search. And that was out of my own building frustration with the senior leadership. So this is where it felt like divine intervention, like God may have actually been telling me the path to take. When I did my very specific job search, only one open position returned, and it was actually perfect. Oh, and it closed that night at midnight. So at the time I saw it, I had about 3 hours to decide. 1, was I going to apply? And 2, did I have time to update and tailor my resume and properly submit all the required documents in time for the closing? Well, I decided that I would try and see where it took me. It has been 9 months since that job search, and I did get the new job. And I've been in the new role for 6 months now. The outcome of those 3 senior leaders is one that has been pretty surprising and actually quite unfortunate. The situation did not end well for them, not because of me, but because I was not the only one, not by a long shot, who thought the climate was toxic and decided to leave. They had a few major issues in the past few months, including executive level concern about how many people were leaving this part of our organization. Changes were made as a result. The kind of changes you always wonder if anybody's bold enough to make when you know things are actually this bad. I do wish these leaders all the best because I know they are capable of amazing things when they are at their best. And mainly, I wish they would become more self-aware and listen more because many, many people tried to tell them that things were wrong. What can you do so that you do not become blind to your own mistakes as you grow more successful? 1 is you should be very clear about your goals, your plans, and your priorities. Many of the issues on this list would have been improved if all actions taken by these leaders were deliberate and fully in line with their vision and their goal, and if their goals and plans were aligned to the vision. 2, ask your trusted colleagues and friends. Spend more time asking your trusted birds what you should improve about your leadership style and take some of their thoughts to heart. This will go a lot farther than 100 of their negative whispers behind all your team's backs. And 3, remember that you are not invincible. None of us are. I spent part of this weekend listening to a podcast about the Watergate scandal and President Nixon's impeachment, and I think that power goes to people's heads sometimes. Even people like the leaders I discussed in this podcast who are mainly really good people. They forget that all of this success can come crumbling down when you lose humility and the ability to admit fault, no matter how senior we become. None of these people had an easy job, not at all. But they did and they do have amazing people working for them. Hundreds of amazing, intelligent, motivated, driven people who had intense passion for the mission and the vision. And when you are graced with the responsibility of leading an incredible team like this, make sure you go forward with a humble heart, a strong and clear sense of where you are going, and always take care of your team, your whole team. You cannot do this alone. The good news is you don't have to. You can connect with us on Facebook at Genuine Driven Women, or to learn more about what we offer, check out genuinedrivenwomen.com.